Hey, this is Writers Row. I'm DC Wright-Hammer, and I've brought back a special guest. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hey, I'm Drew Melbourne. I'm the author of Personal Git and the Conspiracy of Days, a science fiction fantasy novel set in the 201st century, something like that, and other books that will come out probably in the 201st century, because that's how fast I am.
There you go. There'll be a link in the description down below. And I have brought Drew back onto Writers Row. We want to discuss indie authors and social media. I started Writers Row because I was on Twitter and I became part of writing community there, and I started serving other writers, and me and another writer, David Gain from the earlier episodes, thought of this idea to start this show. And things have kind of gone all over the place since then. I've actually been off of social media for over 18 months, just completely. I haven't been on Twitter. I haven't been on Facebook. I haven't been on Instagram, any of those social media sites. And I also haven't been doing a ton of writing, but I wanted to bring Drew on to talk about how social media plays a role as you're an indie author and some of the things that we need to, consider with that. And so, Drew, what role does social media play, in your opinion, for the independent author?
Well, I mean, I think it's huge, and it's helpful in a couple of different ways. I'll say three different ways, and then I'm saying that before I've decided what the third way is, but I'll come up with something. Sure. So the one way is just from a marketing standpoint, right? Like, just particularly for indie authors, like, people need to know that you exist before they can buy your book, right? And so marketing can take a lot of different forms. It can be at dropping book links and saying, hey, here's my book, and running promotions and letting people know when new stuff is coming out. It can be just establishing a presence online. So there are bigger authors that I follow in comics and in novels who, people like Scalzi, or people like Gail Simone in comics, who are big personalities who are able to, I think they're having fun on social media. I think they're being relatively genuine, but they're asserting their brand, and they're inviting people to know them on some level, and that is going to have a dividend of people being interested in picking up their books. And so for an indie author, you kind of want to do the same thing, but without the the backup of being able to be like, hey, here are these 15 bestseller books that everybody knows about, and this was adapted into a movie, and this was adapted into a TV show. So I find in social media that I can tell the same joke that John Scalzi tells, and not as many people are going to like or retweet me, right. And I just have to learn to live with that. And then a third thing that is also a good reason to be on social media.
There is a third thing.
Yeah, of course.
So when I first published my first novel in 2017, I was not on social media at all. I mean, I was on like Facebook. I created like a Facebook group, and like all of my family and friends bought my book, and that was about it. And then when I go to publish my second book in 2018, my editor's like, I'm like, hey, how do I do this whole marketing thing? What do I do? And she's like, well, you got to get on social media. You got to get on Twitter, and you got to start tweeting. You just got to tweet. You just got to put tweets in the world. And I'm like, okay. And I'd never been on Twitter before. And so that was my mindset going on there. Let me get on Twitter and let me tweet. And then, like, I didn't know what I was tweeting or whom I was tweeting. And then she's like, oh, here's some hashtags. Here's writing community. Here's, all this stuff.
Sure. And
then I started to pick up, sort of a following, and the whole let me follow you, you follow me back, and then all this stuff, and then we'll all share our book links and do these book tags. Like I've been off for an internet eternity from social media, so I have no idea what's going on right now. But back when I was like starting out, like that was the thing, and like suddenly a year and a half into being on Twitter, I've got 20,000 followers. Like I have no business having that many followers. And, it was great. I did move some books here or there, but, and the biggest thing is just networking with other writers, finding out what does work and doesn't work in indie publishing, meeting so many people, just friends, and just having good times on Writers Row and elsewhere.
Sure.
But, I think with all, I think you do have to have that presence, because I've seen the way my book sales are now without a social media presence versus when I had it. And it wasn't great when I had it, but it's worse now. But I also think you have to balance that, because, the reason why I'm not on social media is because it became a problem for me. It became all consuming. And during a global pandemic, during, all kinds of things that were happening in social justice at the beginning of 2020 summer, it became so overwhelming. I just said, I gotta just cut it off. I just gotta stop. I gotta go away. And I haven't gone back because a lot of reasons. I've got a lot of personal reasons. I made a whole video on it, but yeah, I don't have a presence as an author outside of this channel, which isn't getting the views it used to get as a result. But how do we balance that? The marketing, the networking with some of the issues like I experienced on social media.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, how do we balance that? Badly, in my case. I think, I mean, I would say, as somebody who, and maybe I'll tell the story in a minute, who has been kicked off of Twitter before. Earlier I said there were three things that why Twitter is important as a writer. The third thing is I'm scatterbrain, as evidenced by that. And it's super helpful for me to be able to just put a thought, somewhere. And Twitter for me is really partially an extension of my brain. And it sort of serves as kind of like a necessary function for me. And honestly, the degree to which I sometimes struggle with social media is sort of the opposite side of that. Is I like to use Twitter to be like, this is the thing I have to get out, whether it's like a stupid dad joke or, something my son said, or like a clever bit of dialogue, or, whatever it is. I like to be able to just kind of get it on there. And, and I also, I use social media to comment and reply to other people's stuff that I think is interesting.
Sure.
To retweet and raise up stuff. And also sometimes to shit talk people who I disagree with politically, which I should really stop. It's not great for my brand. But yeah, I mean, I think in general, the big problem I have is that I think the people who are most successful on social media are on social media slightly too much, right?
Okay.
I mean, there's sort of a kind of a wall of, and for all the people who are listening to this, who are on social media quite a bit, I love you all. Please retweet things I say and like them. And you're great, and you're making the right choices. Yeah, I mean, obviously everybody has different life situations and so forth. And as somebody who, has spent a big chunk of the pandemic era being a stay-at-home dad, I'm the last person to be like, oh, well, you should be doing other stuff with your time. But it's definitely the case that the wall I always come up against is how do I keep track of all these people? How do I, there's just a flood of all the stuff all the time. And, if I reply to 3 or 4 people over the course of the day, is it going to disappear in the sea of tweets, right?
Yeah, well, and I think that's the pros and cons of it, right? Because it gives you this quick ability to inject a thought, an ad, something, and get some kind of feedback in most cases. Especially once you've built somewhat of a following, you can get a little bit of feedback. And for me, what I struggle with is that feedback, that sort of immediate gratification, took the place of writing a chapter that was really hard, that no one's going to see for 2 years or a year and a half or whatever, or 6 months or whatever it might be. And so I got this this dichotomy of like, do I do the micro content and get get all those humanistic hormones satisfying me and get that next hit of that Twitter drug, or do I do the hard stuff of getting in my writer brain and focusing and typing that up? And Twitter was winning 99 times out of 100, and that's that brought my series to a screeching halt. We talk about stop writing series in the last episode we were on, but between that and then doing like Writers Row episodes, my like creative juices, no, that's not the right word, my creative fulfillment was there, and I didn't need writing any longer, which was my fulfillment for like 4 or 5 years before I started this other stuff. So I think social media is great, but if you have other goals, I think you can get in the way of them.
Yeah. I'm reminded of when I graduated from college and I moved to New York, and I had the expectation that I was going to be like a big famous novelist or playwright or something or other. My plan was not well defined. But I within 3 or 4 months I had like a one act play maybe, and like a bunch of, I forget, whatever else I was writing at the time, and like no actual traction on anything. And I remember feeling so frustrated. And what I did for 6 or so months was open mic and stand-up comedy. And the satisfaction of that and I'm super old, so this was like 2002 or something.
Okay.
But so pre-Twitter is the important part here.
Sure.
The satisfaction of being able to write a joke and then to be able to go up on stage and say the joke and having achieved the purpose of the writing,
right,
was tremendously satisfying and helped me to get over some creative blockages. And I feel like Twitter has that potential, right? Because it's the same sort of thing. It's taking the thought, bringing it to to an audience and getting a response, right? And to your point, right, like that's the thing that, that's the dopamine hit right there, right? It's good if it's like used in moderation with the doctor's, supervision, right?
Yeah.
But then if you're just in the alley, just like freebasing, then this is not great.
Right.
And I think trying to figure out how to balance those things is super important, or, equally valid, just not balancing it, right? And being like, screw that noise, I'm gonna, do other things, which I've heard are equally valid.
Yeah, doing other things I've found is good. And then, again, social media has its uses, and I know a lot of people who have a lot of success on, especially like TikTok. I've heard really good things about indie author TikTok.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard. That's hearsay.
Yeah.
And then
it's a lot of pointing is my understanding of TikTok. That's all I know, is like people like point at things and they're like words here and then here.
And some weird woman's voice that just kind of shocks me every time I hear it. But I've heard, people are moving books on these social media websites. And then something like what you mentioned earlier can happen. You get all integrated with these sites, and then you can be deplatformed suddenly. We've heard that with like YouTube creators, where they get, their channels get blocked or they get demonetized or things like that. And so, talk a little bit, as much as you feel like sharing, about being deplatformed.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so I was permanently banned from Twitter. Spoilers, I am on Twitter now, so I'm kind of screwing up my own story. But I was, their words, permanently banned from Twitter. And I thought if I am a relatively like reasonable, nice person, even keel, not one to like threaten people or do sort of the things you would normally expect to get deplatformed for. And I thought, like, if I was kicked off of social media, it would be for just like getting really upset with like an anti-vaxxer or some sort of like political nonsense where, somebody's like, well, I really think these vaccines are making us magnetic. And, maybe I'd be like, no, you should not exist anymore. Right. But no, I, for the most part, I'm able to contain myself. No, the thing that got me kicked off was Muppet Babies. So So Muppet Babies, and also the South Korean international breakthrough hit Squid Game. So
Okay.
so what happened was so I'd watched Squid Game a little bit later than other people. Have you seen Squid Game?
Yep, I watched it a little bit later too, but I've seen the whole thing.
Yeah, so at some point in October, like after sort of like the main surge of like interest, right, had died down, and I watched it with my wife. We were, we were in October. We watched a bunch of South Korean horror movies, and then Squid Game because it had come out, and I was like, this is great. I love Squid Game, and for whatever reason, what I latched onto was stupid tweets about Squid Game mashups. So, for instance, I had a tweet about like the next season of Squid Game they'll basically just be like Ted Lasso. So they'll like hire somebody from like the American version of Squid Game, but it's like a completely different sport, and he doesn't really know, how South Korean Squid Game works. But
Right.
like a lot of people learn like important life lessons. And then I'm a big fan of, I guess I'm not embarrassed to say this, one really great show that everyone should watch is Netflix's Babysitter's Club. It's great, surprisingly great. Seriously, like stop what you're doing, go watch the Babysitter's Club, and then come back. And so I was like, what would be a great idea for a show? Baby Squitters Game. And
oh boy,
yeah, and so so it's like little girls or middle school girls, I guess, doing babysitting and also games where they murder children, and maybe that was starting to push the line. And then so freaking Gail Simone, who I mentioned earlier, she's a comic book author. She wrote some like Deadpool comics and like a really great Wonder Woman run and some other stuff. She's a lot of times, if something random is trending on Twitter, it's because of her, and she's great. And she was, just sort of randomly suggesting, what if it was Muppet Babies and Squid Game, and then it was Muppet Squid Game, right, or whatever it is. And I am one of those people who it's one of my faults, right? Like if somebody makes a really good joke on Twitter, I will reply with a slightly less good joke, right? Like, technically, I suppose, I could elevate something, but ultimately, what I'm doing is, brand extension in a diminishing return sort of way, right? I think that the official term of art is like a reply guy, and sometimes that's a pejorative, right? It's it's people kind of being a dick about it, and I come from a place of love, but like I also recognize that the thing I'm contributing is mostly to amuse myself and to continue my own enjoyment. And so I wrote some lyrics to this Muppet Babies Squid Games mashup, which was Squid Game babies, they'll make your dreams come true. Squid Game babies, or they'll murder you. And I was like, it rhymes. That's cool. It took me maybe like 30 seconds to write. And apparently, if you use the words murder you on Twitter, somebody in Southeast Asia will get a little ping. They'll see your tweet. They'll say, this has the words murder you in it. They'll flag it, and you'll get kicked off of Twitter. And so I the day after tweeting this, I go on Twitter and I'm like, oh, like something's not loading properly. And I'm like, maybe my Wi-Fi is not working, whatever. And then it's about a day later that I see like an email that I think probably went to spam that was like, hey, we're gonna ban you from Twitter because of a tweet you made. And like at the time, like I didn't even know what tweet it was, so I had to like go searching for it. And I was convinced it was gonna be like I was, mean to somebody because they were telling people to, inject bleach or whatever it was, right? And I find this tweet, and I'm like, and so I write like a reply, like they've got like a little form you can fill out to like appeal. That's like, actually, there's a TV show called Squid Game, and there's another TV show called Muppet Babies, And a thing that people who watch this video may not know is the more you explain a joke, the funnier it gets, which is
Right.
not true. So I'm just like murdering this joke. I'm like, and the reason it's funny is because the lyrics are very similar, but they're changed to reference what happens in Squid Game. And like I send this, and I know it's just going to like some random person in Southeast Asia whose only job is just to like see what's been flagged and hit a button. And so like I get a reply that's basically like, I'm paraphrasing, but like, oh, that's very interesting. Also, you're still banned, right? And so I write another reply. I'm like, what you may not have understood about my joke about Squid Game and Muppet Babies, and just pages of like this, no one's gonna read it, right? And so this goes back and forth for a few days, and like eventually they're like, we've reviewed your case and you are permanently banned, permanently. And I'm like,
Wow.
So and there are a couple of things going on. Like one, I'm like, this cuts me off from, kind of the marketing thing, but also, just people who my only, connection with is through Twitter, right?
Yep.
And so it's very like, I had this moment. I was like, is that it, right? And that other part I was talking about, like where it's also like part of my brain, I put onto Twitter like random thoughts and stuff just to kind of keep my head going. And so it's just kind of like shell shocked for a couple of days. And I have to say, as somebody who, like I was saying before, like I don't even have the wherewithal to overuse Twitter. Like I just, I just don't have that much energy to be able to do like the really aggressive, in a good way, tweeting to like really like maximally use the service. But
Right.
even me, like I was like, I'm on Twitter for, squeeze it all together, like 15 minutes, half an hour a day. Right. And I was just shell shocked. And eventually, so I'm like, let me write 4 more, emails that are, even though I've been permanently banned, that explain, what the Muppet Babies are and how the cartoon from the 80s is different from the animated show that's on today, whatever. But apparently the magic words, if anybody ever gets permanently banned from Twitter, were on like email like 47, I said, right at the end, I'm like, and, if you want, I can just delete the tweet. It's fine.
Exactly.
And it went bing. And they're like, yeah, do that. And then I was like, all right. And so I delete the tweet. I'm like, I've deleted the tweet, whatever. And basically I get like this form letter that's like, now that you've accepted that you're wrong, we're going to react. I'm like, I did not say that. But also fine.
Right.
Let's pretend I said that. And
So,
of course, what happened is I'm back on Twitter, and I've been off for like, a week at this point. And I'm like, hey guys, I'm back. Everybody's like, what?
exactly. That's probably the way people are gonna react to me when I get back on. I am planning on getting back on in the next few months, and just being like, "Hey, tap, is this thing on?" Like, and nobody remembering who I am or caring or whatnot. Oh,
people will care about when you coming back.
Okay, so like, I'm equal parts. Like, are people gonna just like forget me, which would be like the worst thing?
Yeah.
The next worst thing, are they gonna hate me? And then the last thing is, oh, maybe they'll miss me and be like, oh, cool, you're back. Hey, this is great. But long story long, because that's what we do on Writers Row. Be careful about the platforms you choose and have a backup plan in case you do truly get deplatformed permanently. Be careful with that.
I was considering blogging. Thank goodness I don't have to blog.
Yeah.
Like it's
You're
2006 or something,
You're not going to get the same endorphin hits from, having your blog read by 8 people. So it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But appreciate you coming on and telling your story, Drew. You want to pitch anything at the end? I mean, based on my YouTube analytics, nobody watches this part of the video anyway. But feel free to promote if you want to.
Well, with that in mind, so I mentioned my novel, Percival Gint and Conspiracy of Days, which is out now and available on Amazon. The follow-up, Percival Gint and the Inevitability of Fire, which I will learn to say perfectly well by the time it comes out, should hit at some point next year, and it's going to be really great, and you should keep an eye out for it.
Awesome. Appreciate you coming on, and we will catch everybody next time. Take care.